All right, so everyone wants to know, right? Does money buy happiness, or does it just kind of like mess up our relationships?
And a really great question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got this script that somebody sent in, and they call it "Can Money Buy Happiness, or Does It Ruin Relationships?"
Oh, interesting.
So let's dive into that
Okay.
and see what we can find out about money and happiness. You know, how it all comes together.
And yeah,
Uh,
it's a question that people have been asking like forever.
totally.
Philosophers and economists and like regular people.
Yeah.
And this script, I think, is hitting on something really important right away. And that is financial stability and happiness.
Hmm.
They're not always the same thing.
Yeah, they're talking about this research, right, that says, if you have enough money to cover your basic needs, you're going to be happier. But, like, is there a point where more money doesn't make you happier?
That's where it gets really interesting because I think we all know people who have a ton of money, but they're totally miserable. And then there's people who are, maybe struggling a little bit, but they just seem so joyful.
Right.
So it's obviously not just about how much money you have.
Yeah. So if it's not just like more money, more happiness, then what is going on?
Well, the script talks about this research on spending habits.
Okay.
And it says that spending money on experiences, like going on vacation or going to a concert or learning something new,
Yeah.
that tends to make people happier than buying like stuff.
Okay. That makes sense because, you buy a new gadget and it's cool for a minute, but then you get used to it. But
Right.
like a trip you've had with your friends, that's like a lasting memory.
Exactly. Experiences create like memories and stories.
Yeah.
And they help us connect with other people.
Right.
And they kind of shape who we are in
Yeah.
a way that like things just can't.
Yeah, it's like investing in your life, not just your stuff.
I love that.
Yeah.
So maybe the question isn't, can money buy happiness, but like, how can we use money to make ourselves happier?
Yeah.
Totally. And that kind of leads into the next point, which is the whole money and status thing.
Oh, yeah. Like if you have a fancy car or wear designer clothes that's supposed to make you look more successful or something.
Right. But that could be a real trap because if you start thinking that your money is what makes you valuable, then you're going to be chasing that forever.
Right. There's always going to be someone with a bigger house or whatever.
Exactly. And then you end up feeling like you're not good enough.
Yeah, you're always comparing yourself to other people.
And that just leads to like envy and resentment.
Right. Not exactly a recipe for happiness.
No, not at all.
Okay. So we got to watch out for that status trap.
Yeah.
But what about like our actual relationships with family and friends and, romantic partners?
Yeah.
Does the script talk about that?
It does. And it gets really interesting because they use these examples of how money can cause tension in families.
Like those awkward holiday dinners where everyone's secretly comparing how much money they have.
Yeah, or like inheritance battles that tear families apart.
What?
Or even just like parents lending money to their kids and then the kids don't pay it back and it creates all this resentment.
It can be really hard to separate the money stuff from the family stuff.
Totally. And the script even talks about adult children who are supporting their aging parents.
Oh, wow. That's a whole other level.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Because you want to help your parents, but you also have to take care of yourself.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
a delicate balance.
Totally.
And if you don't communicate openly and honestly, money can really divide a family.
So family dynamics and money can get messy.
Yeah, definitely.
What about friendships? Do they make it out okay?
Not always.
Yeah.
Actually, the script talks about how if friends have really different incomes,
Yeah.
it can create some awkwardness and tension. Like,
Yeah.
have you ever felt weird suggesting a restaurant because you knew your friend couldn't afford it?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Or I'm the one who can't afford it, and I'm always like, oh, I can't go, or whatever.
Right. And it can make you feel like you're not really equal in the friendship.
Yeah, for sure.
And it can also cause problems when it comes to like splitting bills.
Oh, yeah.
If you're always the one paying more because your friend likes to do more expensive things,
It adds up.
yeah, it can start to feel unfair.
So what do you do in that situation? Does the script have any advice?
Yeah, they say the most important thing is to be honest.
Okay.
Like if you're feeling stressed about money, talk to your friend about it.
Okay. But how do you do that without, like, sounding judgmental?
You just focus on your own situation.
Right.
Like you could say, hey, I'd love to hang out, but I'm trying to save money right now, so maybe we could do something a little less expensive.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay, so honesty is key.
it is.
But let's be real, things get even more complicated when we're talking about romantic relationships.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The script says that money is one of the biggest causes of stress in relationships.
Which makes sense, right? We've all heard those stories about couples fighting over money.
Yeah, or hiding debt from each other.
Yeah.
Or wanting totally different things.
It's not always about how much money you have either, right? It's about what the money represents. Or
Exactly.
your values and your priorities.
Yeah, it's about your whole vision for your life together.
So it's not just about balancing a checkbook. It's about figuring out if you're even on the same page about life.
Exactly.
Does the script say anything about how to deal with that?
They say that communication is key.
Okay, so no more avoiding those awkward money talks.
Talk about your financial goals, your spending habits, any debt you have.
Like, get it all out in the open.
Yeah, the more you talk about it, the less likely you are to have problems later on.
Makes sense, but what if you're already in a relationship and you have totally different approaches to money? Like one person's a saver and the other's a spender. Can you even make that work?
It can be tough, but it's definitely possible.
Okay.
It takes effort and compromise from both sides.
Right.
But remember, it's not about trying to make your partner be exactly like you.
Okay.
It's about finding a way to work together.
To be on the same team even if you have different money styles.
Exactly, and sometimes that means getting help from a professional.
Okay.
Like a financial advisor can help you create a plan that works for both of you.
So it's like couples therapy, but for your money.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot here, family, friends, romantic relationships. It seems like the key takeaway is to be open and honest about money.
It is.
But let's go back to that original question. Can money buy happiness? I feel like the answer is...
It's complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, money can definitely make you more comfortable and secure, which can contribute to happiness.
Right, but it's not a guarantee.
No. There are plenty of rich people who are miserable and plenty of people who don't have a lot of money but are really happy.
So there's got to be more to it.
There is, and the script talks about how true happiness comes from things like having strong relationships,
Yeah.
feeling like your life has meaning, and living in a way that feels true to yourself.
So money isn't the source of happiness, but it can be like a tool to help us build a happier life.
Exactly, and that brings up a really interesting question. So if money isn't like the source of happiness,
Yeah.
but a tool to like build a happier life,
Yeah.
what does that even look like?
Yeah, how do we put that into practice?
Well, the script actually has some interesting ideas, especially when it comes to like family and money. Yeah, you were talking about those inheritance blowouts.
Oh, yeah.
They're saying that open communication is super important, like years before anyone passes away.
So don't wait for the will to be read to start talking about money.
Exactly, because it's a lot easier to talk about these things before they become a problem.
Yeah, but it's like families avoid these conversations, like the plague.
It feels morbid, right?
Yeah.
But if you can be clear about your values and what you want to do with your money, like before anyone gets sick or anything,
Right.
it can actually protect your family relationships.
So instead of letting money tear you apart,
Yeah,
you're using it to bring you closer together.
exactly. And the script also had some advice about parents lending money to their kids.
Oh, yeah, that can be a tough one.
They said that it's actually better to treat it like a real loan, like even write up a little agreement.
Really? That seems kind of cold, though. Shouldn't family just help each other out?
Well, of course, but the problem is when you mix emotions and money, it can get messy.
Yeah, I guess it's true.
So by setting clear terms, you're protecting both the relationship and your finances.
So it's like taking the emotion out of it and making it a business transaction.
Kinda, but it's more about setting boundaries with love.
Okay.
You're showing your child that you trust them and they're learning about responsibility.
So it's a lesson in financial independence.
Exactly.
That's pretty clever. What about when it's the adult children who are supporting their parents financially? The script mentioned how emotionally charged that can be.
Oh, yeah, it can be really tough because there's guilt and obligation and sometimes even resentment.
Right. All mixed in with the desire to help.
Exactly. And they say that the key is communication. Both parents and children need to be honest about their needs and their limits.
Because as much as you want to help your parents, you have to take care of yourself too.
Exactly. It's a balancing act.
For sure.
And sometimes you need help with that balance, like a financial advisor can be really helpful in those situations.
Okay, so again, it's like taking the emotion out of it and just looking at the practical side of things.
Yeah, like what can we actually afford and how can we make this work for everyone?
That makes sense. Okay, so we've talked about family now. What about friends? The script talked about how those income gaps can lead to tension.
Right. And you were saying how it can be awkward to suggest activities that, some of your friends can't afford.
It's the worst. You don't want to leave anyone out, but you also don't want to always be the one compromising.
Yeah. So what they suggest is just being upfront about your own situation.
Okay.
Like not in a complaining way, but just honestly saying, hey, I'm on a tight budget right now.
Right.
And on the other side being understanding if your friends can't do something expensive.
So open communication, that seems to be the theme here.
It is. But what if you have that friend who's always suggesting these extravagant things,
Oh, yeah, we all have that friend.
even though they know you can't afford it?
Right.
In that case, you have to advocate for yourself, like maybe suggest something else that's more budget friendly.
Right. Or just be honest about how much you can spend.
Exactly. And a true friend will understand.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, friendships are about the connection, not about who can spend the most money.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've covered family and friends. Are you ready to talk about the big one?
Romantic relationships and money. Hit
Yeah.
me with it.
Well, the script didn't hold back on this topic, which I appreciate.
Great, too. It's like the elephant in the room.
Yeah, money is a huge source of stress for couples,
Huge.
but people try to pretend it's not a big deal.
Yeah, and that's a mistake.
It is, because if you ignore those financial differences, they're just going to come back and bite you later.
So no more avoiding the money talks.
Nope. Talk about your goals, your habits,
Yeah,
your debt.
everything.
Yeah, get it all out in the open.
But what if you're like total opposites when it comes to money?
Yeah, like one's a saver and one's a spender.
Can that ever really work?
It can, but it takes work and compromise.
Okay,
And remember, it's not about changing your partner.
right.
It's about finding a way to work together.
To be on the same team.
Exactly. And sometimes that means getting help, like a financial advisor, can be really helpful for couples.
So like couples therapy for your money.
Exactly.
I love it. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Family, friends, romantic relationships. And it seems like the takeaway is communication is key.
It is. Set those boundaries. And don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, but I think there's an even deeper message here, isn't there?
I think so. It's about how we think about money.
Okay.
Instead of seeing it as the problem or the solution, what if we saw it as a tool?
A tool to help us build the life we want.
Exactly.
That's a really interesting way to look at it.
It is, and it's a lot more empowering than just constantly wanting more, more, more.
For sure. But how do we actually make that shift?
How do we go from thinking about it to actually doing it?
Right. That's the real challenge.
That's a big question, isn't it? Like, how do we actually use money to, like, live a better life?
Right. Because it's easy to talk about these ideas, but like, how do we actually put them into practice?
Well, the script talks about this really important first step, which is figuring out what your values are.
Okay, but values is kind of like a vague word. What does it actually mean when we're talking about money?
It means, like, what's important to you, what makes you happy, what gives your life meaning. Is it spending time with people you love? Is it being creative? Is it helping others?
Okay, so you figure out what's important to you and then what?
Then you think about how you can use money to support those values.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the script said, money is a tool.
Okay.
Like, imagine you're a carpenter. You wouldn't use a hammer to saw wood, right? You'd use a saw.
Right. Tool for the job.
Exactly. So we got to be just as smart with our money.
So like if one of your values is spending time with family, you'd maybe spend less money on stuff and more money on like family vacations or even just like having dinner together more often.
Exactly. Or maybe you really value learning new things, so you use your money to take a class or buy some books.
It's like using your money to invest in the things that are important to you.
Exactly. Instead of just buying more stuff.
And it can be even bigger than that, right? Like what if you're really passionate about like social justice or something?
Yeah, then you could donate to organizations that are working on those issues, or you can support businesses that are doing good things in the world.
So it's like money can be a way to make a difference, to actually make the world a better place.
Exactly. And it's not about like never spending money on yourself or anything. It's just about making choices that feel good.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
This whole conversation is making me rethink my own relationship with money. Like I've always been pretty good at like budgeting and saving, but I never really thought about it as a way to like make my life better.
And that's what's so cool about it. It's not about being perfect or knowing all the answers.
Mhm.
It's just about being more intentional with your money.
More mindful.
Yeah.
So what would you say to someone who's listening to this and they're like, yeah, this is great, but I have no idea where to even start?
I would say start small.
Okay.
Pick one thing, like your spending or your saving or your debt, and ask yourself, how can I make this better? How can I make this reflect what's important to me?
So like maybe have that money talk with your partner that you've been putting off, or finally make a budget.
Exactly. Just take one step.
It doesn't have to be this big dramatic thing.
No, it's a process.
Mhm. Right.
And your values might change over time and your situation might change. And that's okay. Just keep checking in with yourself and asking, am I using my money in a way that feels good?
I love that this has been such a great conversation.
It has.
We started with this question of, can money buy happiness? And we ended up talking about so much more.
We did.
Yeah.
It's amazing what happens when you really dive into a question.
Yeah, you start to see all these different angers and complexities.
Exactly. And hopefully our listeners are feeling a little bit more inspired and maybe even a little bit more hopeful about their own relationship with money.
Because at the end of the day, it's not about the money itself. It's about using money to create a life that feels good, a life that's meaningful and fulfilling.
Absolutely.
Well said. On that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We hope you learned something new and maybe even got some ideas for how to use money to build a life that you truly love. We'll see you next time.